It's always a pleasant thing to run into somebody that you can believe in, somebody that's reliable, somebody that knows what they're doing, and for the most part, if you screw up, at the very least you know that they got you on the rebound. Throughout Stay Night, when it comes to the fighters, the heroes, the kings, one of the most common traits is somebody expecting them to maintain frame. You know, it's just like a commander. The commander is expected to maintain frame even at their worst for the sake of their own soldiers to carry on. If the commander goes off showing a lack of resolve, his soldiers are going to start caving from the inside, and then the morale of the whole army is just going to die off altogether. For a lot of people who have been on the field and have adapted to this lifestyle, this is nothing. It's just another day for them. And even if they haven't adapted, they'll be the first ones to get over it. I think Mandricardo speaks to the person that may or may not adapt in certain situations. Somebody that's not quick to get over things that easily, constantly second guessing themselves just because they want to get the best results or a better outcome. And we get to see that front and center when a lot of conversations tend to become overwhelming for him. We all got fears, we all got doubts, and ideally we want to just wipe straight through them. But if you're not prepared for what's about to come, you having this impulse response might leave you in the same place or a place even worse than you were before. And that's why I feel like Mandricardo feels so human. It feels like he represents the cost of critical thinking, being at the whim of somebody else, and why it's important not to be in your head all the time, because you'll live there, you'll make your bed there, you'll make your tomb there. And honestly, a lot of those same conflicts that you try to avoid would probably be naturally resolved if you just take the hit on the chin in the first place. You gotta just take the hit. Like, instead of weaving it for 7 days in a row, just take the first one, and now you don't have to worry about dodging it all these other days. It's a necessary aspect for the growth. And what you'll realize is that those same things that bothered you don't even make the difference in the grand scheme of things. You probably won't even care about it next week, next month, and you certainly won't care about it years down the road. So what exactly are you worrying for? Now, if you're a king, and Mandricardo was a king, or somebody of actual status, I can see why this would be somewhat of a big deal. You got a lot of your foundation invested in the politics of your image. That could be detrimental. But for the everyday average Joe, you have nothing to lose. You'll fail just like somebody else will fail. You'll win just like somebody else will win. You bleed just like they bleed. What's the difference? And looking at him in LB5, just starting off, there's some lines to look at when he first meets Corday. And he holds himself to such a high standard that he doesn't even want to admit that he doesn't know who Corday is, because he doesn't want her to judge him in that way, by his intelligence or even by his awareness. She claimed that she wouldn't care if he doesn't know. But just as a person does, the moment that he said he didn't know her, she immediately changed her mind and said that it made her sad. And this made Mandri feel away, because it's like, now he's thinking, maybe I shouldn't have had the interaction in the first place. And he blames these types of interactions on why he'd rather just not deal with people. One thing that Mandricardo has to understand is that for a lot of situations, you gotta just let go, especially for something so small. If you're gonna cower at the little things, then when it's time for you to actually show up, you're gonna be nowhere to be found. That's the thing about people. They're not Legos, they're not games, they're not robots. So chances are you can be the nicest person in the world. You could market yourself as Mr. Beast, and people will still find a reason to hate you. Oh, you're just doing this for your image. Oh, you just want a tax write-off. Oh, look at this clip that we found of you 10 years ago. It's like, bro, I kid you not, I've seen two people dap each other up right in front of me, and the moment one of them walked off, the other person started talking shit about them. So you know what they doing when I walk off. It's just gonna happen. It's not something that you can control. I have my own doubts, but I could have never imagined being this self-conscious. Like, at this point, you're scared of your own shadow. And what for? What do you gain? You can be the worst person in the world, and I've seen it. And if you're transparent, people will still rock with you because you keep it real. Case in point, look at the way that a lot of people view Gilgamesh. Yeah, he's an asshole. Yeah, he's gonna say a lot of things that you don't want to hear, but he's not going to lie to you. He's gonna keep it real. And that's worth way more than any conversational or social facade. Too many people want their ego stroked. That's why I mess with Hans. I need to do a video on him. Hans, does this dress make me look fat? No, bitch, you make the dress look fat. You big as hell. But did he lie? When you're talking about virtues, humility and vulnerability are some of the best characteristics you can have. And a lot of people have a lot less of one of the two than they think they do. Mandry has also went into the fact that he was jealous of Bartholomew and how he could make friends so easily despite his ability to come off weird. And this just goes back to the effectiveness of having those internal monologues. We literally just covered this in the last video. If we were just getting his expressions, we'd have no context. We'd think he's suspect, but we wouldn't know why. The reason Bartholomew was able to make friends is because he was vulnerable enough to allow us to have an opinion on him. It's not because he has some type of impeccable people skills. If your entire character is thinking about the right thing to say, people aren't gonna think much. And the only person this tension eases up with for Mandry is with Ritsuka, because he knows that he's not going to judge him. So there's a lot of times where Mandry will try to forego the thoughts in his head to console Ritsuka. You got the time after Drake's death, and even then he's in his head like, I could mention this, but I'm too afraid that I might make him feel worse. And see, out of everybody, he's got a lot of respect for Ritsuka. If there's anybody that he doesn't want to let down, it's him. But that's just the thing. You can't feel for other people. They're either gonna accept what you're going to say or they're not. There's no point of playing out these millions of scenarios in your head, especially when these scenarios are from your perspective, not theirs, which makes it infinitely less likely that they're gonna happen anyway, because they're only coming out from your view. But the longer Mandry hangs with us, specifically Ritsuka, there is an evolution in the way that he deals with things, namely when he starts to open up about his past. It's just like I mentioned before, Mandry talks to us about how he wanted to establish himself in the world, so he acquires Durandal, one of the greatest swords of all time. And you know what happened? Oh, you only got that sword because Roland dropped it. And this led to a huge hit to his pride. So now he's got to go out and do something bigger and better. And you know what's going to happen then? They're just going to move the goalposts. Even after his contribution to the squad, they're still going to try to talk down on his name after this very lost belt. That's why you just got to do you. Again, you had the situation with Corday, and when she was starting to be taken over by the nanomachines. Now the tables have turned, and Ritsuka is in Mandry's position, because one thing that Mandry noticed about him is that he's also putting on a facade. That's why Ritsuka openly admitted that it put him at ease that he doesn't have to follow through for once, at least from Mandricardo's perspective. Mandry told him, yeah, you can fail. All you can do is your best, because the entire time the weight of the world has been placed on Ritsuka and he's just been rolling with it. I'd even go as far to say it's almost like Mandry represents a parallel to Ritsuka's struggle. You have Mandry that represents him dealing with those feelings on the spot, and then you have Ritsuka, who does have those feelings, but he keeps those emotions bottled in for the sake of everybody else. Mandry himself even calls him out for this, saying, are you sure you're okay? Because you deal with a little too much to just roll everything off. But like we've talked about in the Draco video, eventually that bottle is gonna explode. And just going into the video where I talked about some of the stuff that he's had to deal with, if you look at the thumbnail, he looks very troubled. It looks like he's dealing with it, but it also looks like he can't take much more of this. And this is way back then. And in the narrative, it's been in our face the whole time. Corday is just another one of those situations where he was considering on abandoning her because he knew that would be the only way that they would survive. And it was really starting to eat him alive because, as I mentioned before, he started this journey with an opposite mindset. If we go back to the Singularity with Orleans, when Marie sacrificed herself, he was dead set on something like that never happening again. Fast forward all the way to LB5, and considering all the work that he's put in, he can't help but think of the proper course of action, and that of course being survival. May not be the right course of action, but it is proper. Something that puts Mandricardo at ease when he deals with Ritsuka is what he sees. Man, this guy has saved the world. He's got all these friends. He's expected to be a leader without so much as flinching, and he still has uncertainties. He still has doubts and fears. At this point, Mandri started to realize that these battles in his head are nothing, and is giving him more confidence. He leaped from not having anything to say to making the ultimate sacrifice against Artemis at the end of Atlantis. He had no idea if that was the right thing to do, but he made a choice, and that's commendable in its own right. You gotta give Mandri credit for that.